designed a little album cover called Revolver. You may have heard of. Please give a warm Festival Beatle fans welcome to Mr. Klaus Voorman. Welcome. Take a look. There's a graphic novel that Klaus has drawn. He's one of the finest artists you would ever imagine. Take a look at that picture. That is gorgeous. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Hello. Yeah, working. It's working. No, this is the in Hamburg, the große Freiheit, and this is the Schmuckstraße, and right there, I can't see my hand. It's the Kaiserkeller. It's right below there. That's the very first. So the second, actually, after the Indra. Yeah.
How they come from Liverpool to Hamburg? Craziest thing in the world that you would take this little teenage English band and bring them to a strip club in Hamburg to play. And I asked Klaus, like when they talk about the Reeperbahn, the red light district, I said, was it really dangerous? Was it a dangerous area?
It was really awful because sailors all over the place, drunk people, and pimps and prostitutes and gypsies, and lots of fights were going on. It was really, really heavy, and was a scary place for everybody.
So would you go there normally, or you would not?
I would normally not go there, and for me it was like a really first to be there. So I heard that music from the basement, and I said, that I have to really witness.
So one of the things I didn't know, Klaus just told me this morning, you weren't a rock and roll fan. You were more of a jazz classical guy.
Right. I was a schooled classical piano player. Didn't read any music, but I played Chopin and Liszt and Beethoven and whatever. I played it all.
Just by ear?
Yes, by ear. And I played in front of audiences, and I was a really good pianist. But when it came down to making the decision what I was going to do, we decided on the graphics.
And that's so you're going to be a graphic artist.
Yeah. But rock and roll was new to me because I was more into jazz and all those things. But this rock and roll I liked a lot. I liked it. Oh, this is interesting. I heard it on the radio. But when I heard it live, that was for me it was incredible.
You walked down into this smoky, grimy little place. Yeah. What was it? What was that image? What hit you?
Well, it's funny. The place wasn't really full, and the band that was playing was Rory Storm and the Hurricanes with Ringo on drums, and that was great already. It was a good band, great drummer, I thought. And the next band was the Beatles. They came on with those checkered jackets and looked pretty strange. But the first guy who came on was one with sunglasses on, and he looked real cool. He looked really incredible. And I thought he must be the leader of the band. But that was Stuart Sutcliffe, who was the bass player. And he went to his amp, and then the other ones came on. And Paul went up to the microphone and said, "Hallo, wie geht's?" He was speaking German, which was nice.
And these are, remember, they're kids at this point. They're 17, 18 years old, right? George is 16 at this point. It's pretty hip to be able to do it, not to be that fearless. And to take the job, and go into a dangerous thing and say, we don't care, we just want to play.
Yeah, the thing is, I was wearing like a suede jacket, and they had all those nappan leather, with studs on it and greasy hair, and I was scared they're going to really kill me, But I took the guts, sat down, and listened to that music. And then the Beatles came on, and it was just incredible. It floored me. I think Paul was the first one to sing "For Goodness Sake" or whatever, any of those old rockers. And then John came, was singing maybe "Twist and Shout" or something. And nobody can really imagine what it was like, because this has never been captured. Even the version they did on record then is nowhere close to how they were sounding in those days.
For the real deal, for what it was live. So there are other people in the club. Other people come, we go to a show, we watch it, we clap, we enjoy, we don't, we leave. It's how it normally goes. How did you connect with them?
Well, it was difficult because first I had to talk Astrid Kircher, who was a really good friend of mine. She didn't want to go. She was scared, but I said, "You have to see this band. This is just incredible." So I talked her into it. So I actually went with her down to the club. They were actually nice to her. It wasn't they didn't hurt her or anything. And from then on, she went every night. Every night. I mean, I was working at the same time at the agency doing graphics, and I had to, I worked from 8 till 5 o'clock or something, and then I was there every night. And it was just incredible. And then from then on, all these arty people from our college came down, and they all looked so, and the band was always going up and saying, "Who are those people? They're interesting. I want to meet them." So eventually they said, "Klaus, you can speak a little English. Go up and introduce yourself." And that's what I did. I took a record cover. Oh, there it is. Yeah, right. That's the first record cover I actually did for a record company, which is Walked On Run by the...
was it the Ventures?
Or the Typhoons.
The Typhoons.
The Typhoons. And showed it to John, and he took it really that close to his nose because he didn't have his glasses on. So he's really blind, if he doesn't have his glasses on. So he said, "Go to Stuart. He is the arty one. He's the artistic one." So I went to Stuart, and from then on, we were kind of glued together. The whole band, in particular Stuart, who was artistic, and he wanted to talk about all the artists and about films and Jean Cocteau and Kandinsky or whatever, the artists that came up. He was just hunger. He had a hunger for information about those things.
People have stories. They say, well, Paul kind of pushed Stu out because he didn't like his bass playing. But everything that I've ever read that you say, that everybody, that Stu's passion was really art. It was that music was a laugh, right? His creative soul was really in art.
At heart, he was a real rocker. He was an Elvis fan. He loved rock and roll, but he learned just a few bits to be in the band. Like John said, "Well, he looks good."
Right.
So it wasn't important for rock and roll. It's very easy to play, but most of the songs they could tell you put your finger there and you do it like this. So I think he played a really, really good rock and roll bass. Yeah, but Paul was not very happy with it, and he would have liked somebody else to play. In the end, Paul played the bass himself.
Right, and it's a remarkable story that then that connection changes the look. We go from Astrid, who then falls in love with Stu, they become an item, and she has this idea to change their entire look. And she the haircuts, the jackets.
Well, I would say that credit has our friend Jürgen Vollmer to do. He was at the same art school with us, great photographer, and he was with us, and he had his hair on his forehead for as long as I know him. And I didn't. But we all thought that looks cool, so Astrid started combing my hair down. I didn't like that at all. I didn't like that hair.
Did you think you looked cool, or no? You thought it was stupid?
It was a little silly,
Yeah.
But I did it for her,
Of course, we're guys. We do it for, yes.
Yeah, and then bit by bit, maybe somebody was combing his hair forward, and then they said, "Look at him, he looks strange," And so in the end, they all did it.
It's the beginning of the band getting style. Everybody's playing rock and roll, but now they start to have an image that's just theirs. There's James Dean, and everybody's trying to look like James Dean or look like Elvis, and now this is theirs. The Teddy Boys, they're tough guys, and that iconic picture of them, in Germany on the streetcar with the...
Yeah, but I would have liked that, maybe you people won't like this, but if they would have taken that image on properly. I didn't like those suits. I personally, those grey suits, didn't think that was really the hip style. I mean, the haircut was already there. But when it comes to Beatles for Sale, that's about what we looked like in those days. So they sort of hooked up to us about Beatles for Sale.
So here's Klaus and Astrid in that scene. They see them in the early days. They go back to Liverpool, and you know, as opposed to saying that was a moment in time and it's gone, did you stay in touch with them after they go back to England? After they go back,
it was so nice because we became so friendly. They didn't have anybody in Hamburg that was anywhere helping them or being like a mother or somebody caring, making a cup of tea. They didn't have all that. They were really lost by themselves. So they came to Astrid's house. We looked after them. We went for them to the beach and to a cinema and going to an exhibition and did all that. So we were really good friends. We became friends, just nothing to do with music, just to do with being friends. And that's how this friendship stayed. In particular with Astrid, and John wrote back, and Stuart went back to England. So we always had a transfer. We got letters, and they sent us records, like I Am Blue from the iCats. I remember that.
Yeah.
You know, the great old records which nobody had, and they could get a hold of those records through Nems Enterprises through the record shop.
And they would send them to you.
They would send them to us. So we were really the closest to. In Germany, you didn't have any of that.
No music.
No rock and roll music. Music, yes, but classical music or
but not
silly Schlager stuff.
So when they, you know, the one thing I've never heard from you is that when they explode on the world, when it's BBC, we get to 1964, and did you know what was happening here in America? Did you know that they had taken over America? As far as music goes, that they had changed the Western world?
Yes, I did. I mean, they actually, like I said, we always were in contact. They always were calling us or writing us letters. So we really knew what was going on.
And it's amazing of what the image. Klaus has this graphic novel that's out. Do you have any copies left?
Just a few. You have to be quick.
We have to. I mean, it's spectacular. You know, especially as an artist telling the story. Through his pen, through his eye, like these pictures. Do we have the other one of John under the bridge? Okay, so we get to this. In the book, which I love, as we fast forward from these early days, you know what, I don't even want to set it up. Explain your bath. Explain the bathtub.
Yeah, it's difficult. You see, I
can't make this up.
I decided to not explain something in words. In the first place, I'm very bad with words. I'm having a hard time talking to you people. But I wanted to do a graphic novel and show people exactly what it was like. So I tried to show this bathroom, and which you see in that graphic novel. I was in an attic sort of apartment, really tough. And the bathtub was in the kitchen. So you had the dining stuff, the washing machine, the sink, and the bathtub in the kitchen.
And this is in London?
That's in London.
This is in London?
That's in London. And that's when John called me. And I was in the bathtub and got to go out of the bathtub. Who was on the phone? My wife said, it's some John who wants to talk to you. And then it was John on the phone and said if I had any idea for a record cover. And that floored me. I couldn't believe it. I was really, What do you say?
Right.
If the most famous band in the world asked you to do a record cover, it was terrible in a way. It was.
But you don't want to screw it up, right? You don't
exactly.
You don't want to fail them. And it's not just the most successful band in the world. More importantly, they're your friends. I know that. You don't want to fail your friends. You don't want to let them down.
I don't want to let them down, yes, but it was more the pressure that you know how many people are going to see that record, and I can see it now because I signed those bloody things all day long,
So they call you and say, "Come hear what we're playing. Come hear the record."
Right. They asked me to come down to the studio and listen to the tracks. So I show in the graphic novel how I'm driving down to Abbey Road, and you see the zebra crossing, and people like Mal Evans, who was the. I mean, you can't. There's only part of the book which are much later. But then I would listen to the tracks, and I was just amazed because you see, can you imagine in those days that somebody was experimenting, and the people that it's like love me do, suddenly has to hear Tomorrow Never Knows. And that was the backward tapes and all the records. It's just amazing sounds on it. In those days, it was just a sensation. And it was hard for people to understand that this was a step in a completely new direction. So my job was to glue together the public that heard those things and suddenly was exposed to that. So I had to find a way to do that. So I knew the fans have to see lots of photos, pictures. That was important. And they want to see the faces of the Beatles. That's important. And the third thing was that lots of hair, because in those days that hairstyle was sensational. Long hair was completely out in those days. You couldn't walk around like that. But they did it.
I said to Klaus, so I'm an 8-year-old kid, and I've loved the Beatles. I still remember as clear as day, like it happened yesterday, my mom calling me Beatles are on Ed Sullivan. And we sat and we watched because I bought all the singles. And we bought the singles, and I would buy albums. And every picture we ever saw of the Beatles, Life magazine, it's 4 guys going, they're all happy, and enjoying it. It's rock and roll. Like you said, it's Love Me Do. And it's happy. And I think it was the first rock album that I bought. We'd have singles as a little boy. And we'd go to the record store. My mom would take me every Saturday. She loved music. And I pick up this record. And you look at the cover. And even as a small boy, I knew this was going to be different because no cover ever looked like what you designed. I knew it was different before I even opened the seal. You did that. Thank you. There are pictures, and there are beautifully sculpted pictures that tell a story, but it set the tone. It was like the introduction. The picture you did, the art that you created was the introduction to the record. Please tell the story about Brian, about what Brian Epstein's reaction was.
Yeah, first I'm going to tell you that there was lots of things which I am very happy about. Nobody told me what to do. They didn't even know what the title of the LP was.
Good point.
And I asked them, do you have any idea what you want to see on your cover? And they said, we don't know. You just do it. We do the music, you do the cover. And I was happy about that.
And that almost never happens anymore, ever.
But that's really difficult. It's hard. As nice as it is to have freedom, but if you have to create it all by yourself, that's real pressure. And when I walked out of that room, and I said, "Shit, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do?" And so I racked my brains. And first, when I came home, I wrote little notes saying, this and that. I wrote little notes to know which direction this whole thing has to go. And when I finished the cover, I went up to EMI.
Can I interrupt you for one second? Did you have a totally different idea before you got to this? Were you in different places and trying to decide in which direction to go?
Yeah, you see, I don't remember everything. It's a long time ago.
That's allowed.
I remember I did one in an air balloon. Like that basket you have.
Yes.
Where they were in an air balloon. And the other one was in a boat, and they were hanging over the railing and stuff like that. But then the hair idea came, and I did lots of different versions with the hair.
Were you ever thinking about using color, or were you always going to keep it black and white?
I said black and white, and I said, okay. Nobody told me not to, because everything was color in those days. You had those photos of smiling faces all over the thing.
Right.
And I said, no, we're going to do this different. And I said, Beatles, you don't have to have the name Beatles on it. That's not necessary. Everybody will know when they see that record, black and white, and see the faces, they know that's the Beatles. So when Brian came in, and we all looked at the cover. It was at EMI. They had George Martin, the band, and I think Dick James was there from Northern Songs. I don't know who else. I can't remember. And Brian Epstein was standing in the corner. And everybody else came forward to the cover. And, for example, Paul noticed, hey, that's me on the toilet. I had a little picture of Paul sitting on the toilet on the cover. And then George Martin came up and said, "No, you can't do that, Klaus. You have to take it off." So eventually I had to take 2 photos. Other one was Brian Epstein with a piss ball on his head.
Really?
Yeah, but I did it on purpose because I knew they had to do something.
You had to do something, right.
Yeah. So that was fine. But everybody came forward and they were saying, "I like this picture." And, "Oh, look, that's over there," and this and that. And everybody talked about it. And John came up and said, "Hey, Klaus, that's you. You put yourself on there, you cheeky bugger."
Did he?
And Brian Epstein was standing in the back of the room and sobbing. He was crying. And I thought, what's wrong with him? Doesn't he like the cover? I was really scared. So maybe he's the manager. Maybe he said, "No, we can't take this cover." But then he came forward to me and said, "Klaus, I was so scared that the people out there would not accept this incredible new music, which is going so far ahead of what they are used to up to now. But your cover builds that bridge." And that made me happy.
It's exactly what it did. Questions I've always wanted to ask this man that I finally get the chance to do. Did you always have the idea of really using their eyes? Or were you going to draw the eyes and somehow it came later, I'll use their real eyes? Because that is scary as shit to an 8-year-old child. Like, what the hell?
But you're not the only one. I met quite a few people that were scared of Georgie's face.
Anybody? When you first got it, were you scared? Yeah.
Yeah, which is interesting because I had a hard time. I got the likeness of John. That was easy. That nose and those nostrils and those almond-shaped eyes. That was easy. And Paul's profile was good, and Ringo looking up. I made him look up because his nose was so big.
Nice, very, very respectful.
Yeah. And George was really, really tough. George is a beautiful looking guy, but to draw his face is murder. I tried and tried. And in particular, that style of just doing it in lines.
Yes.
Is very, very, very difficult. And then I got a magazine. And that magazine, there were pictures of the Beatles, nice and big, like the foreheads next to each other like that,
Yeah.
So I took that photo of George and cut out the eyes and stuck it on the cover. First I wanted to see if it works. And I looked at it and said, "Oh yeah, that's it. Just the eyes and the mouth." And it worked. And I was happy with it.
Well, they must have been stunned by that. They must have. John must have loved
yes,
that.
I was amazed because nobody explained about anything apart from those 2 photos.
Right.
Everybody accepted the cover, and nobody. You see, I thought maybe they think, "Yeah, you can't do that, black and white," and nothing. Everybody loved it, and they knew. You see, the Beatles were trendsetters. Every time they did something, they went a step forward, always. And this was a big step forward. And that's what made them so great.
The timeline of it, of what you said, when you said that Brian was afraid of how fast it went, you've heard me say it, and I say it on the air over and over again. 1964, Please Please Me. Love Me Do. 1966, Turn Off Your Mind, Relax, and Float Downstream. This Is Not Dying. No band in the world does that in 2 years. Virtually no band does that in their lifetime, let alone in 2 years. It's unbelievable. And you reach out to your friend whose art you love, who introduced you to an art scene even early. And I feel like I understand from John's sense. Look how far we're going. Wait, you don't ask the EMI art department to come up with a kooky picture. You ask your friend whose art you love, your friend is having discussions about Kandinsky and their artists. That's who you asked to do an album cover for music that we know is taking it far out. I totally get why they reached out to you. Take a look at this picture. It's what in the graphic novel. I love this picture of you, like putting yourself in it. It's It's almost like an Escher drawing to me, you know, of the artist in the picture drawing the picture. It's there's a nightmarish element to it in the sense of the angles that you had at everything. Like you said, we're used to album covers, and everyone else, even that era, of like this, or around a tree, or whatever it was. And you made this in black and white is as psychedelic as anything that you've ever put together. You know, this is as far, this to me, this is 66, and right out of this comes 1967, the Joshua Light Show, and the Ink, and Pink Floyd, and, you know, and Storm Thorgerson going in the same direction as you are, doing albums and going off, and suddenly album art really, really counts for our music. Not so much for the Dean Martin record, and I don't say that to put it down. Dean Martin's supposed to look like Dean Martin on an album cover.
The incredible thing was that I got actually £50 for that cover.
They got a deal.
But you see, from then on, from that moment on, when I did this cover, suddenly the budgets just flashed up in the air. They knew that the record covers can sell records. They didn't realize that before,
right?
Which is amazing. And then you had those people doing fantastic covers. You know, they spent so much money. Just imagine that Pink Floyd one where the pig is hanging. It's not just a photo collage. They didn't have computers in those days. No,
it's a pig.
They had an actually huge balloon as a pig hung between that. They had to build it, and it cost a fortune. And those budgets for the people to do their records, they went up and up. And in those days, it was really amazing. When I listen to people now when they try and get a record budget to do a record, it's terrible.
I know, they don't understand. I was lucky enough to interview and talk with Storm Thorgerson before he passed. Storm,
he's a great guy.
Hypnosis, did all the Pink Floyd albums. And we talked about this cover. And we talked about how much it meant to him and the team, and he said, you know, just like the musicians were trying to not outdo each other in terms of ego, but push it further, we looked at Klaus's work and went, okay, what can we do? How do we push it further? And we're trying pictures and multiple images, and doubling and tripling, and when they get to Dark Side of the Moon, and he's like, well, what do you want to do? And they said, enough with all the tricks. The band said to him, he said, I think it was Gilmore, said, why don't you just draw something? And he said, exactly, he goes, well, what? And they said, I don't know, look at Klaus drew Revolver. Why don't you draw something for us? And he said, okay, and you didn't know him, did you? At this point, you're not related. But he did the same thing. He said, so I listened to the music, and I just heard ba-boom, 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 boom, boom, boom. And I thought, it's a heartbeat. Okay, it's a heartbeat. What about, you know, a machine? What about the heartbeat image of the zigzag on the, you know, right. On the scope? And I'll do that. And from that you go, okay, well, that's a heartbeat. Well, what if it just keeps going and it wraps around the whole album? So if you didn't even open up, this music's alive. There's a heartbeat to it. And then a prism and you know, you come up with like You and He, the most iconic album separately, but with the same series of thought. How do I present an album that's good, that could very well change the world? I listened to the album. What does it tell me? But they said to him, look at this. Go in that direction and see what you come up with. Which I think is a wonderful tribute. You changed the world. You changed how things happen. Thank you. I could spend the entire day just as we disassemble this, just talking about this album cover. And if there's a graphic novel left outside, and do you have any of the deluxe ones left?
Yes, there are some there. There's all sold out. Because Genesis, that company, does anybody know that company? Yeah? Yeah, they're doing great books. They're very, very special. They do something out of leather, and then they have transparent paper, and doing great books. And I love those books. And we came together and we did 500 limited version of 500 altogether. And there's one super deluxe, which is 67 You can buy 67, all sold, they're all gone. And each one of those, I did an original drawing of mine, something similar to well, some a little for the deluxe version. I did really rather big ones, which was when I was doing the graphic novel. I had so many little pieces of paper, I didn't throw anything away.
Excellent.
So I thought it would be nice if the people that go out there and buy those books, if they have something original. So each book has an original of mine in it.
You're not a copy or a print of it. You actually get an original Klaus drawing in the book. I'll say no more. Say no more. So that is it. It's called The Birth of an Icon, Revolver 50, and it's just absolutely spectacular. But usually the story tends to end there. You've done this and you keep doing work. Here, we said this minute you didn't like rock and roll, but will you play some piano? You said you play Chopin. He turns into one of the great bass players in the world in rock and roll. Maybe if you're lucky, you get one moment in art that is remembered. He turns on to play with George on all these records. And not just It's Okay, their friend. Joey Mullen was here Friday night, and Joey's sitting on the stage and said, here's all you have to know about Klaus playing bass. If you got Klaus to play bass, you never had to worry. You were done. If Klaus was there, you knew it was going to be a great recording and it'd be done right and quick and perfect. That's what we knew if you could get him to play bass on your record. That's what he said. And who is it? John said his favorite album? What was he said? The first one was his solo album.
My favorite album is the Plastic Ono Band LP with John. It's so great because John came in the studio, sat down at the piano. Yoko was sitting next to him, and he played the song. We listened to it, and then we played it. There was not any rehearsal or anything. Maybe we played it once, and we took first or second take, nearly all of the songs on that. There's mistakes in it, and I don't care. It doesn't matter. And Ringo was hitting the drums and playing. It was just to play with Ringo is magic. You know, it's just, to me, it was magic. I loved the man, and to me, it was not, oh, the great Ringo. For me, it was, there is my friend, and there I am, and we played. And Ringo actually said a few months ago, which I'm very, very happy about, he said that this was his favorite ever trio of playing with. He said, those three people together.
Just you, he, and John.
John is a fantastic rhythm guitar player, which most people don't really realize. He's really, really good rhythm guitar player. Really is.
Amen to that. And you know what you just said about Ringo? Ringo, because of the character that he played in Hard Day's Night and Help, we think of him as this floppy character, as this, comic relief. But every single person who's been on a stage with him or in a studio says he's a hell of a drummer, that he's absolutely in the pocket all the time.
Yes, that's what people can't pull apart. Jazz people have a problem with it,
Yeah.
Lots of in Germany. But in America, the greatest drummers, even our Jim Keltner or whatever, they always have Ringo is a dream, because he doesn't have the technique. He can't do 1,000 things different with the feet, and like those great drummers, they can do all that. He can't. He has a very limited amount of technique, but he doesn't need it. He plays those magic fills when it's you suddenly you know the records, and then suddenly comes something you don't expect, and the sound of the drum and the it's just lovely.
Right. It's not complicated, but to me, listen to Come Together. I'm an amateur drummer, and we try to play Come Together. Play it, not just play the structure of it or the fills, just the feeling of it. It's two different drum patterns. Just down to I mean, no one else would have. Where did that come from? And it feels like you could have worked on it for a year and not come up with a better drum pattern that suited the song. Everything he plays suits the song, serves the song just perfectly.
And I even realized on the very early things, like I don't know exactly which one it was, if it was, I Want to Hold Your Hand or whatever. It's just what he's doing when he's putting the bass drum down. Like he does it exactly every time, poof, in exactly the right spot.
If little things like that, I noticed when like Please Please Me, we get to Come On, Come On. He rushes it just a little bit. And when you think about why these girls were going crazy because they were so beautiful to begin with. But if you rush that downbeat just a little bit, da 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 da, come on, come on, it's just ahead. And it makes you jump out of your seat. It just pushes you. And it's a little thing, and you think, is it an accident? No, it's exactly where he put it. Just ahead of where it should be. And it's like hitting the gas on the car. That's remarkable what little things can change a song. Where did you learn to play the bass?
But he does it by feeling.
Yes,
Does
they
it by
all did
feeling. You ask him to play something, he doesn't even know what he's doing. You can't put a name on it. And you cannot play the same fill twice. He says, I play what I feel at that particular moment, the way it feels in the room with the people I'm with. And that's the magic about it.
Right. What was the famous line with George Harrison when he's explaining Here Comes the Sun? And Ringo told the story, and he said, Ring, this is in 7, and it starts with, and Ringo stopped him and said, just tell us when to come in, George. Just tell me when to come in, and I got the rest. Easy enough. Tell me how this remarkable artist who designs these works, who played some piano, how did he become this remarkable bass player?
Well, it was funny because I'd never thought of getting into a band and play in a band. And I was working as a commercial artist in London and Smith Waldron agency, and then suddenly I get a phone call from Gibson Kemp. He was in Hamburg, and he had a band called The Eyes. And he said, Klaus, you want to play bass in the band? And I never played a bass before, So
why would he ask you to play a bass if you've never played one?
I don't know. The guy really knew I could do it. That's all. And funny enough, a few days later, I packed all my stuff and then finished the job. And I took the plunge in the cold water. And a few days later, I was standing in the Star Club on stage playing the bass.
That's unbelievable. That doesn't sound... That's like a movie.
Yeah, and it's amazing because I thought Germans can't do that, because...
Right.
Like you didn't have any rock and roll music in Germany. The bands were so bad, I couldn't even think, of those bands actually doing rock and roll in those days.
Right.
But now they're getting really close and have great musicians. But in those days, they didn't have any. And then I thought, okay, I try it. But I felt good when I was practicing and listening to records. I was listening to Radio Luxembourg, which was a station in those days in that vicinity. And American people don't know that. I knew all the songs they wanted to do. They sent me a list, and I tried to get all the records and play to it. I just played to the records. And then I did my own version. And when I came to our first rehearsal, I had big smiling faces. They couldn't believe it that I could play all that,
How long did it take you?
It was quick. I mean, I must admit, I played classical guitar before I played the bass.
So at least you had a sense, you knew where the notes were. You knew
I know classical guitar, and that's why everybody asked me, how did you do that intro to You're So Vain from Carly Simon? And that's, for a classical guitar player, that's a cinch. It's not something for bass players. They can't do that. With 2 fingers you can't, with a pick you can't do it. And I just do. For me it was really easy.
But it's the most distinctive opening to a song, especially in top 40 radio, that like what? Wait. And in Folker you stop talking because you have to hear where this is going to go. It was brilliant.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. If you can play a classical guitar, you definitely have the chops to play bass, no doubt about it. That's simple, that's easy.
So you opened up the thing about Carly Simon. Tell me about other recordings outside of working with the boys that you're very proud of, that you love.
Well, let me see. B.B. King was very special B.B. King was a dream. I mean, everybody knows B.B. King. And he was in the studio. He was sitting there with his guitar and he played every time he played and he sang. And the producer was sitting up there in the box and he was waiting for some response, you know. And you know that problem. Yes. And, oh, could you do it again? But no word of saying, oh, could you do this or change it or anything. That he didn't say anything, just to do it again. So he goes again and again and again. We played that song lots of times. I mean, we all didn't mind but B.B. was actually playing it each time, the whole solo. The guy could have stopped us, but he didn't stop us. All he did is, in the end of the song, he said, can you do it again? And that's very, very, very bad.
Yeah.
Very bad.
Give me a direction. Give me something to work on. Right?
Exactly.
It's like a director saying to an actor, just do it again.
Yeah, or you stop the song before. Hey, hold it, you know.
Yeah.
But no, never. You know, we just played the song again and again every time. He played those beautiful notes.
The sound, you know, we talk about, you know, this is not a guy with the flashiest, you know, he's not doing hammer-ons and playing like Eddie Van Halen, but a man who picks up a guitar and with one note, you hear, oh, that's B.B. King. There's certain people, Miles Davis, for me with a trumpet. There's so many great trumpeters. How is it that first note, and you go, it's Miles. If I didn't know the song ever, you go, oh, it's Miles. It's the same trumpet. It's not a different trumpet. Than he could pick up somebody else's trumpet. It would come out the same way. There's just something about it that brings it together. I promised I would leave you a couple of times for some questions for Klaus. Yes, sir.
This is a little off the revolver cover, but do you have any insight into the release of Sie liebt dich when they released their two songs in German?
The question is, does Klaus have any insight to the two German versions, Come Give Me Deine Hand and Sie liebt dich, when they did in Germany?
I think they actually asked me to translate it, but I goofed on it. I didn't.
Did you do the translation?
I think so. Yeah, but I didn't. They didn't take my translation. Somebody else did.
I see. Okay.
But that's all I know about that one.
Yes, sir.
Tell us about the instant karma session.
Tell us about the instant karma session.
Yeah, it was really like that. I was asked in the studio. I think it must have been maybe 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And we all sat down. John comes in, sits at the piano, boom, boom, plays that song, and we all listened. And Alan White was playing drums. So Alan White and several other people. So we all practiced the song. And there's this little guy in the studio, and I had no idea who he was. And he said, "Can you take the cymbals off the drums?" You know, and. Yeah, we all did that, whatever he said, and we played the song a few times, and then we went through the control room, and we saw all those flashing lights. All tape machines were put on, and you had those tapes running, the tape loops, tape echo.
Right.
Tape echo and this and that, and the cymbals, of course, taken off the drums. Howell Blaine had to do that too, yes. And then this little guy turned up the volume button and then hit us. It was so incredible. That sound of instant karma. I wish anybody got that record, just listen to it really, really loud. It just floors you, you know. And it was incredible. And then I looked at this guy and he said, it said a PS on his shirt sleeve. So that must be Phil Spector, you know.
Right.
That was the Phil Spector sound.
It is the loudest, angriest acoustic piano ever recorded. I mean, it's like a bullet. It's like a gunshot. You could feel it's not just percussive. It caught the anger, the emotion, just in a plain acoustic piano. Yes, sir. He's asking, do you use a picture of George from Rubber Soul?
No, not deliberately, no.
No. Yes.
I was just wondering if you could speak just a little bit of the first-hand experience of the loss of Stu.
Would you speak a minute about the loss of Stu Sutcliffe?
Yes, Stuart became a real good friend of mine. And if he was having quarrels with Astrid, which was very hard for him. And he came to me like a friend. Yeah, I was just living across the road, so whenever he had a bad time, he came to me. So we were really, really good friends. And he became very ill, and he was lying in bed, and he was talking all the time. He was very, very alive. You know, he could say things like other people don't say in a whole lifetime. He was like spinning. His head was spinning and getting faster and faster. And he was a great, great man, really, really beautiful. And then he suddenly says, "Klaus, I have to turn around." Then he turned to the wall and went to sleep, you know. So that was shortly before he died.
And was there a sense of rushing him? Did you have a sense that he was dying? Or
Yeah.
you did?
Yeah. They didn't know what it was, and they couldn't really find out because his, what do you call it, his stomach and
Yeah.
The bladder or whatever, everything was a little small, sort of maybe to do with his childhood or whatever. Anyway, he was brought up maybe not 100% perfect.
Right.
You know,
Right.
that might have been the reason. But he had a brain, not a tumor. He had a blood
aneurysm.
clot
Yeah.
on, aneurysm. Yeah.
It's a beautiful man. Yes, on this side. Yes, sir.
I was wondering if you have any behind-the-scenes stories from the trip to Toronto that led to the Live Peace in Toronto concert.
Oh,
Question:
yeah.
stories about going to Toronto, which led to the live piece in Toronto.
Yeah, right. So it's a long story. I don't know if it's enough time to tell the whole story, but
Maybe a touch.
a touch of it. Yeah, right. John called and said, "Klaus, do you want to join the Plastic Ono Band?" And I was really thinking, oh, Plastic Ono Band. I didn't know Yoko at that time because that's how that whole connection started. And I thought we must go naked on stage or something.
It's a good guess. Fair enough.
Yeah, but so he said, well, Eric Clapton already said yes, he's going to be in the band. So I said, okay, I'm going to come too. So yeah, at the airport. 2 days later, we were at the airport. No rehearsals, no nothing. We were in the plane, and John told us the songs. We had the last row in the plane, made free for us. And John was actually sitting in first class, but he came down, sat down with us. So he did a rehearsal. We do money in A. So that's all. You know it. So
Some rehearsal.
That's the rehearsal.
Some rehearsal.
That's the rehearsal for that song. And then he came and said, "Oh, let's do Cold Turkey." I said, "Cold Turkey, don't know it." So I play it to you. And then he went and sang like that. Temperatures rising, fever is high. I said, oh,
In the plane.
I said, this is fantastic. I was so happy
Yeah.
that he was doing that. But how are you going to rehearse a song like that on the plane? You know.
Not easily.
So we just did some silly version, which you hear on the record.
Right.
It's okay. But then later on we went in the studio and recorded Cold Turkey. And it was just incredible. That's where I came up with it. Boom, 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 boom. That's how it
Right.
really fitted. And then he was singing that, voice, and that's it really turned out really well.
You drove that song.
Yeah,
You drive that song.
Yeah, the guitars do. That together made the song.
God. I got one more question. Yes, sir. Yeah, great question to end with. Can you talk about Anthology
Okay.
and how the cover came together?
Okay. Neil Aspinall, he was the head of Apple. He's dead now. He was the head of Apple, and he said, "Look, Klaus, I've got 7 artists which are coming up with ideas for this. I want to do something where you capture the 10 years Beatles in one cover. So maybe the one has got the funny Sgt. Pepper suit on, and the other one got the one from '64 and all that. So something like that." So I said, "Oh, that's like a competition, is it?" And he said, "Yes, that's what it is." So I came up with my ideas, and I had several ideas, which all were good ideas. But then came this idea of doing this poster wall, like they do this billboard
Yeah.
thing, where you have, I said, you have all the posters from the band from the start on top of each other, and it sort of falls off slowly, and then when you rip it down, you see the first cover, the first poster that ever was glued on that poster wall, and so that's how it happened.
It's brilliant because
And then-
because you're appealing just what he did on Revolver to me. You're peeling the layers of Beatledom through and through as you go back through musically and visually.
Exactly, that's what it was. Yeah, and it was funny. And then when I came up with the idea, I went to New York and we talked about it. And I said, "What's with all the 7 other artists? Don't they have anything?"
No.
They didn't.
What an honor to spend some time with such a brilliant man and a brilliant artist. Mr. Klaus Voorman, thank you so much. Take a bow. We're going to have a Beatles auction, and then we'll have some more talks and some live music. Mark Rivera, Mark Hudson coming up. Lawrence Juber will be up. Stick around.